The coffee was still burning my skin when I realized my own father had just declared war on me. $900,000 in forged debt scalding liquid across my chest, and a man I once trusted threatening to destroy everything I'd ever worked for. But what he didn't know was that I was about to become his worst nightmare. Before we dive into this absolutely insane story of betrayal and ice-cold revenge, I want to thank every single one of you incredible subscribers for helping us hit 1,000. Your support means everything, and stories like Linda's today show us that sometimes justice really does prevail. If you're ready for a tale that'll have you questioning everything you know about family loyalty, smash that like button and let's get into it. My name is Linda, and I used to believe that family was everything. I used to think that blood was thicker than water, that fathers protected their daughters, and that the man who raised me would never, ever try to destroy me. I was wrong about all of it. It started on a Tuesday morning that should have been ordinary. The kind of morning where you smell coffee brewing, hear birds chirping outside, maybe catch a few minutes of peace before the day begins. I was 29, living in my childhood home, helping my father Richard manage his finances after Mom passed 3 years earlier. I thought I was being a good daughter. I thought I was holding our family together. Richard was sitting at the kitchen table, newspaper folded beside his elbow, steam rising from his favorite blue mug. The sunlight slipped through our faded yellow blinds, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. Everything looked normal. Everything felt safe. Then he smiled. It wasn't his usual warm smile, the one that used to make me feel protected as a kid. This smile was cold, calculated, predatory. It made my blood freeze in my veins. "Linda, honey," he said, his voice sickeningly sweet. "I have a surprise for you." He slid an envelope across the table like he was presenting me with a birthday gift. My hands trembled as I reached for it, some primal instinct already screaming that whatever was inside would change everything forever. The papers spilled out like poison across our old wooden table. Loan agreements, credit card statements, casino markers, mortgage documents, stack after stack of debt, all bearing signatures that looked exactly like mine. The numbers blurred together as I tried to process what I was seeing, but the final total hit me like a physical blow. $900,000, almost $1 million in debt. All supposedly mine. "This must be paid by Monday," Richard said, his voice flat and casual as if he were asking me to pass the butter. "The collectors are coming, Linda. They want their money." My throat closed up. I could barely whisper, "No." That single word shattered his facade. His face twisted with rage, and before I could react, he grabbed his coffee mug and hurled the scalding liquid straight at me. The burning coffee hit my neck and chest like liquid fire. I screamed, stumbling backward, clawing at my shirt as the hot liquid seared through the fabric and into my skin. The pain was instant, sharp, unrelenting. "Get out!" he roared, his face red with fury. "Get out of my house if you won't help your own father." I pressed a dish towel against my burns, tears streaming down my face, staring at this stranger who used to be my dad. At that moment, I realized that the man who raised me, who tucked me into bed and taught me to ride a bike, was gone. In his place stood someone willing to burn me alive to save himself, but I already knew this wasn't the end. This was war. I stumbled out of that house with my skin still burning and nowhere to go. My neighbor Daniel, a retired teacher who'd always been kind to me, found me crying on his porch 15 minutes later. When he saw the angry red burns across my chest, his face went white. "Jesus, Linda, what happened to you?" Through my sobs, I told him everything. The forged documents, the threats, the coffee. Daniel listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each word. "That's not your father anymore," he said finally. "That's a desperate man who's willing to sacrifice his own daughter to save himself. And desperate men are dangerous." He was right, but it took weeks for me to fully understand just how dangerous Richard had become. As I sat in Daniel's guest room that night, pressing ice cubes to my burns, the memories came flooding back. All the warning signs I'd ignored, all the red flags I'd dismissed as family problems, the forged signature on my savings account last year. I'd caught him stealing $3,000 from me, but when I confronted him, he had a coughing fit that sent him to the hospital. I'd felt so guilty for stressing him out that I never pursued it. The mysterious mail that started arriving in my name. Credit card offers, loan approvals, bank statements for accounts I'd never opened. When I'd asked about them, he'd shrugged and said, "Identity theft happens all the time." Just throw them away, the way he'd isolated me over the years. Discouraging me from dating, making snide comments about my friends, creating drama whenever I tried to spend time away from home. "It's just you and me now," he'd say whenever I talked about moving out. "We need to stick together, the gambling." Oh God, the gambling. I'd found casino chips in his pants pockets, betting slips crumpled in trash cans, credit card statements with charges from riverboat casinos 3 hours away. When I'd confronted him, he'd sworn he was just having a little fun and that he had everything under control. Everything is under control. What a joke. As I lay there in Daniel's guest bed, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., I realized that Richard had been grooming me for this moment for years. Slowly, methodically, he'd been setting me up to be his financial scapegoat. Every forged signature, every fake document, every lie had been building toward that envelope on the kitchen table. He'd turned me into his insurance policy, but what he didn't realize was that I was about to become his worst nightmare. The next morning, I called the police. Officer Martinez and Officer Chen arrived at Daniel's house within 20 minutes, their expressions serious as they photographed my burns and took my statement. When they went to arrest Richard, he tried to play the victim, claiming I was a troubled girl with a gambling problem who was trying to frame her loving father. Scattered documents on our kitchen table told a different story. "These signatures are all forgeries," Officer Chen said, flipping through the papers. 37 different documents, all supposedly signed by you, but clearly copied from a sample. Richard's face went pale. "She signed them and forgot. My daughter has always been irresponsible with money. Irresponsible enough to forge her own signature 37 times?" Martinez asked dryly. "Mr. Miller, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and domestic battery." As they led him away in handcuffs, Richard turned back to me with pure hatred in his eyes. "You'll regret this, Linda. Blood is thicker than water, but you've just poisoned your own family." I watched the police car disappear down our street, and for the first time in years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. But the real revenge was just beginning. My lawyer, Rebecca Grant, was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in financial fraud cases. When I showed her the forged documents, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "This is one of the most clear-cut cases of identity theft I've ever seen," she said, spreading the papers across her desk. "Your father wasn't even smart about it. Same pen, same handwriting style, documents filed on consecutive days. It's like he wanted to get caught." Over the next few weeks, Rebecca and her team built an airtight case. They hired handwriting experts who confirmed the signatures were forged. They tracked down the gambling debts that Richard had tried to pin on me. They interviewed casino employees who remembered him betting away thousands of dollars while drunk and belligerent. But the most damning evidence came from Richard himself. He'd been so confident in his scheme that he'd kept records. Bank statements showing money transferred from accounts opened in my name. Email chains with loan sharks discussing payment schedules. Text messages to his gambling buddies bragging about his brilliant plan to use his stupid daughter as collateral. "He documented his own crime," Rebecca said, shaking her head in amazement. "In 30 years of practice, I've never seen someone incriminate themselves so thoroughly." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after his arrest. Richard had hired a bargain basement lawyer named Matthew Thompson, who seemed more interested in plea deals than actual defense. When I saw him in the courthouse hallway, he looked smaller somehow, diminished. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he was scared. Good. He should be scared. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the father who tried to frame his own daughter, and the local news had picked up the story. I could see reporters in the gallery, their cameras focused on Richard as he sat at the defendant's table, sweating through his shirt. Judge Virginia Collins was a stern woman with silver hair and zero tolerance for nonsense. She'd read through the case files beforehand, and her expression made it clear that she was not impressed with Richard's version of events. "Mr. Miller," she said, "you stand accused of 37 counts of fraud, identity theft, domestic battery, and attempted extortion. How do you plead?" Richard's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Richard pushed him away. "Not guilty, Your Honor. My daughter is lying to cover up her own gambling debts." I felt Rebecca tense beside me. Richard was going to trial, which meant I'd have to face him in court and relive everything. But it also meant that his crimes would be exposed in excruciating detail. Over the next 3 days, Rebecca systematically destroyed Richard's credibility. She called handwriting experts who testified that the signatures were obviously forged by someone with access to genuine samples. She presented bank records showing that money from the fraudulent accounts had been spent at casinos, not on anything that could remotely benefit me. She even called casino security officers who testified that Richard had been banned from 2 establishments for aggressive behavior towards staff. But the most devastating testimony came from his own gambling buddies. Joseph Martinez, a regular at the Riverboat Casino, took the stand on day 2. Under oath, he admitted that Richard had bragged about setting up his daughter to take the fall for his debts. He'd even laughed about how easy it was to copy her signature, because she'd been signing documents for him for years. He said she was too stupid and loyal to ever figure it out, Joseph testified. Said he had her wrapped around his finger. I watched Richard's face crumble as his own friend destroyed him. The jury looked disgusted. Even his lawyer seemed to be distancing himself. On day 3, I took the stand. Rebecca walked me through the timeline of abuse and manipulation, the gradual escalation from small financial favors to full-scale identity theft. When she asked me to show the jury my burn scars, still visible 3 months later, I unbuttoned the top of my blouse and revealed the angry pink marks across my chest. The jury gasped. One woman in the front row actually covered her mouth in horror. "Your father did this to you?" Rebecca asked. "Yes," I said, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "He burned me because I wouldn't pay debts that weren't mine. He was willing to destroy me, physically and financially, to save himself." When it was Matthew Thompson's turn to cross-examine me, he tried to paint me as a vindictive daughter who was exaggerating the abuse. But every question he asked just made Richard look worse. "Isn't it true that you lived rent-free in your father's house?" he asked. "It's true that I lived there while caring for him after my mother's death," I replied. "I cooked his meals, managed his medications, and tried to help him with his gambling addiction. He repaid that care by trying to frame me for nearly $1 million in debt." The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood up and delivered the verdict that changed everything. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. Richard collapsed in his chair. The sound he made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Judge Collins sentenced him to 8 years in prison, with restitution payments of $25,000 to me for damages and emotional distress. As they led him away in shackles, Richard turned to me one last time. "You destroyed your own family," he whispered. "I hope you're happy." I looked him straight in the eye and said the words I'd been practicing for months. "You destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Today, 18 months later, I'm sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Richard tried to burn me, drinking coffee from a new mug. The house is mine now, paid off with the money recovered from his fraudulent accounts. The burn scars have faded to thin silver lines that remind me not of pain, but of the moment I decided to fight back. Every month, I receive a check from the state prison system. $25 deducted from Richard's commissary account and sent to me as restitution. It's not much money, but it's the sweetest $25 I've ever earned. Each check is a reminder that justice was served, that the man who tried to destroy me is paying for his crimes every single day. He's tried to contact me through lawyers, through mutual friends, through other family members. He wants forgiveness. He wants me to visit him. He wants to make things right. But some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds cut too deep to heal. And some people forfeit their right to redemption the moment they choose cruelty over love. I've built a new life from the ashes of the old one. I have friends now, real friends who care about me, not what I can do for them. I'm dating a wonderful man named Daniel. Yes, the same Daniel who helped me that first night, who treats me with the respect and kindness I should have demanded all along. I'm taking college courses and planning a future that belongs entirely to me. Richard may have given me life, but he never gave me love. Not real love. Real love doesn't forge signatures. Real love doesn't throw scalding coffee. Real love doesn't try to destroy the people it claims to protect. Blood may be thicker than water, but it's not thicker than justice. And justice, when it finally comes, is the sweetest revenge of all. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us become the ones we need protection from. Linda's story reminds us that we don't owe loyalty to people who abuse that loyalty, even when they're family. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button and subscribe for more tales of justice served ice cold. And remember, you're stronger than you think, braver than you believe, and worthy of respect from everyone in your life. I'll see you in the next one.